Each exchange shapes the final verdict. Every camera uncovers reality, grasping your legal protections, enforcing true justice.
I'm not bringing you anything till I see some ID. We have to be careful who we serve, okay? So let's see
Sure,
it.
you want to do that?
Absolutely. Rules are rules.
No, ma'am, that's not a rule. That's just you. And you're making a serious mistake. Mark my words, this place will be closed soon.
Yeah, we'll see about that. This is what I deal with from black people every day.
Investigators would later discover there was no policy, no rule, no written guideline requiring customers to show identification before ordering. But on that day, the restaurant owner insisted on it anyway, directed at only one man. And within months, that decision would destroy her business, ignite public outrage, and cost her manager $569,000 in damages. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Her name was Linda Carver, 52 years old, and proudly the owner of Carver's Country Grill, a family-run restaurant she liked to describe as the place where respect is earned, not given. Anyone who had worked under her knew that was code for her temper. Linda wasn't just strict, she was sharp-tongued, confrontational, and carried a confidence that often slipped into pure arrogance. She had a habit of talking to customers as if she were doing them a favor. A wrong order, a slow question, a hesitation, anything set her off. And she had a particular reputation for treating people she felt were out of place, with an extra dose of attitude. It wasn't written anywhere, but regulars felt it. Staff whispered about it. Even the manager, Daniel Briggs, tried to smooth over the problems she created daily. That afternoon, Daniel was arranging fresh pastries in the display case when he glanced up at Linda. She was already worked up about something, her jaw tight, her eyes scanning the room like she was daring someone to step out of line. But Daniel didn't pay too much attention. He had learned not to. When Linda was in one of her moods, the best strategy was to stay quiet. Across the room, Marcus Hale, 34, an IT technician on his lunch break, walked through the door with a quiet confidence of his own. He wasn't a troublemaker, wasn't impatient, wasn't loud. Marcus had a simple routine: get the same grilled chicken sandwich, eat it in his car, then head back to work. He was dressed neatly, still wearing his work badge clipped to his belt, something most people would take as a sign of professionalism. But not Linda. Not today. As Marcus stepped into line, Daniel noticed him first. He recognized Marcus. He'd served him weeks earlier and remembered him being polite, the type of customer who said, "Thank you," even when he didn't need to. Daniel nodded at him, but before he could say anything, Linda stepped forward. She cut directly in front of Marcus, planting herself behind the counter with her arms crossed. "All right," she snapped, not even greeting him. "I'm going to need to see your ID before anything." Marcus blinked, taken off guard. "My ID? For what?" Linda didn't even hide the disdain in her voice. "Because I said so. You look questionable. I'm not serving you unless I know who I'm dealing with." Her tone was loud enough for the entire line to hear. A couple near the register turned their heads. Daniel froze mid-step. It wasn't the first time Linda acted like this. But demanding ID? Out of nowhere, that was new even for her. Marcus tried to keep his voice steady. "Ma'am, I'm just ordering lunch. You've never asked me that before." She scoffed. "Well, today I am, and don't talk back to me. People like you always have something to hide." Those 3 words, "people like you," hit the room like a dropped plate. Daniel watched Marcus inhale slowly, fighting to keep his composure. He stepped forward slightly, ready to intervene, but Linda shot him a glare he knew too well. "Stay out of it." Marcus reached into his pocket, not for an ID, but for his phone. He wasn't yelling, wasn't causing a scene, but he wasn't going to let himself be humiliated quietly. Daniel saw the moment Linda realized she was being recorded. Her face tightened, but her pride kept her from backing down. "Record all you want," she snapped. "You're not getting served, not until I see something official." A woman in line whispered, "Why is she talking to him like that?" Another pulled out her phone, and Daniel felt that cold twist in his stomach, the kind you get when you realize something is happening that you won't be able to undo. "Linda," he started softly, trying to keep the peace. "Maybe we should—" She cut him off in front of everyone. "Daniel, shut your mouth. I'm the owner here, and I said what I said." Marcus lowered his phone slightly. "So, just to be clear, you're refusing to serve me because you don't like how I look?" Linda rolled her eyes with a laugh. Oh, please, don't play the victim. If you don't want to show ID, then get out of my restaurant. Daniel felt the air shift. People weren't just watching now, they were witnessing. He saw the expression on Marcus's face, the mix of embarrassment, disbelief, and simmering anger. And Daniel knew in that moment that this wasn't going to end inside the walls of that restaurant. Because this wasn't just rudeness. This was discrimination right in the open. And someone had just pressed record. If you believe that standing up for what's right can change everything, share this story and let others know that justice can prevail. The moment the video started recording, the energy inside Carver's Country Grill shifted from an ordinary lunch hour into something tense, something people instinctively knew wasn't supposed to be happening. Linda stood her ground behind the counter, chin lifted, acting as if the camera in Marcus's hand was nothing more than a fly buzzing near her ear. But the tightening around her mouth, the small twitch in her cheek, told a different story. Daniel stayed a step behind her, hands half raised as if he could catch the situation before it fell apart. He'd worked at the restaurant for 7 years and had seen Linda blow up at customers before, but never like this. Never in a way that felt so clearly wrong. He watched Marcus breathe in slowly through his nose, the kind of breath people take when they're trying not to let anger take control. "I just want to place an order," Marcus said, his voice low but steady. "That's it?" Linda leaned forward on the counter with both hands. "Then show me your ID and stop wasting my time." "There's no ID policy," Marcus replied. "I've eaten here before. You've never asked anybody in this line for ID today." Linda scoffed theatrically, turning toward the customers behind him. "Does anyone else have a problem showing ID? No, see? It's always the ones causing trouble." But the people behind Marcus didn't nod. They didn't back her up. In fact, one woman shifted uncomfortably and a man further back whispered, "What is she doing?" Marcus turned slightly, capturing the room on camera. "Has anyone been asked to show ID today?" he asked, not raising his voice, not provoking, just asking. Silence. Not a single hand went up. And for the first time, Linda's confidence wavered. Daniel saw the flicker in her eyes, the split second where she seemed to realize she had isolated herself, but instead of backing down, she doubled down, fueled by the same pride that had run off half her staff in the last year. "I can ask whoever I want for ID," she snapped, jabbing a finger toward Marcus, "and you're not going to tell me how to run my restaurant." Daniel stepped in then, not because he thought he could fix this, but because he couldn't keep standing there watching someone get humiliated for no reason. "Linda," he said quietly, "maybe we should let him order. It's not—" She spun on him, voice sharp as broken glass. "Daniel, if you open your mouth one more time, you can hand in your keys and go home. I'm not running a charity." He froze, and in that moment, everyone in the room understood why none of the employees dared challenge her. She ruled through fear, not leadership. Marcus steadied his phone, focusing the camera on her face. "So let me understand this. You're refusing to serve me unless I show ID. No one else in this line has been asked. You're making up a rule on the spot. Why?" Linda didn't answer. She straightened up, crossed her arms again, and stared at him with a look that said she didn't need a reason, because she felt like it was reason enough. Marcus nodded once, a decision forming behind his eyes. "All right, that's fine," he said softly. "I'm not going to argue with you." He lowered the phone, but he didn't leave. Instead, he glanced around the restaurant at the silent onlookers. "Can I ask you something?" he said, addressing no one in particular. "Do any of you think this is okay?" A few shook their heads. A couple murmured, "No." One woman whispered, "This is wrong." And Linda, hearing the room slip away from her, raised her voice again in desperation. "Everyone can mind their own business. I'm the owner and I'm allowed to refuse service to anyone who makes me uncomfortable." Uncomfortable. That word hit Daniel like a slap. Marcus let out a long, controlled exhale. "Thank you," he said quietly to the bystanders. Then he looked directly at Daniel. Not Linda, not the customers, but Daniel. Something about the manager's uneasy expression told him this wasn't the first time something like this had happened here. "I'm sorry this is happening to you," Marcus said. "I know she's your boss." Daniel swallowed hard. "You didn't deserve this," he whispered, barely audible. That was the moment Linda snapped. "Oh, give me a break," she barked, throwing her hand toward the door. "Get out right now, and don't come back unless you're ready to show an ID like a civilized person." A soft gasp rippled through the room. Daniel closed his eyes in humiliation. Marcus didn't move. He simply said, "All right," in a voice so calm it felt out of place in the chaos. He lifted his phone once more. "Thank you for making your position clear." Then he turned and walked out, quiet, composed, but with a heaviness in his shoulders that Daniel would remember long after the restaurant doors closed that day. Linda smirked like she'd won something. Daniel knew she hadn't. Because as Marcus stepped into the parking lot, he wasn't just a customer anymore. He was a witness. He was a victim. And soon, very soon, he would become the reason an investigation would tear open everything Linda thought she had built. 2 days after the incident, the video had already reached over 100,000 views. First on a local community page, then on a regional news station, and finally on national platforms where people didn't mince words about what they were seeing. It wasn't edited, it wasn't exaggerated. It was raw footage of a restaurant owner creating a rule out of thin air just to keep a black man from ordering lunch. But while the internet erupted with commentary, there was one person who watched the video again and again with something heavier than outrage: Daniel. He replayed it at night, sitting on the edge of his bed with the volume low, hearing his own voice crack when he tried to stand up for Marcus, hearing the threat in Linda's voice when she warned him to shut up, seeing himself shrink back because he needed the job, because he'd always needed the job. And then he heard the one sentence Marcus had said that he couldn't shake. "I'm sorry this is happening to you. I know she's your boss." It made Daniel feel small, like Marcus could see right through him. It made him feel ashamed. So the next morning he made a decision that terrified him. He emailed the footage to the district's civil rights office. Not anonymously, not quietly. He added his name and his number. He didn't expect anyone to respond so quickly. But by noon an investigator called him back. "Mr. Yates, we'd like to speak with you in person about the incident at Carver's Country Grill. Would you be available today?" Daniel stared at his reflection in the restaurant's stainless steel freezer door, his work apron still tied around his waist. "Yes," he said. "I'll be there." By 4 p.m. he was sitting in a small government office, hands clasped, heart pounding as he faced two investigators, one taking notes, the other watching him carefully. They didn't interrogate him. They didn't pressure him. They let him speak. And once Daniel started talking, years of tension poured out of him in uneven breaths. "Linda, she's been like this for a long time," he admitted. "She thinks every black customer is suspicious. Every Hispanic customer is up to something. She complains that people from those neighborhoods take advantage of her business. I've heard her say it 100 times. "Has she ever required ID before?" one investigator asked. "No," Daniel said immediately. "Never. I've worked there 7 years. There's no ID rule. She invented it on the spot." He hesitated, then added, "All because Marcus was black." The room went quiet. Then they asked the question Daniel had feared. "Would you be willing to give a formal statement?" He took a slow breath. He pictured the restaurant. He pictured Linda's glare. He pictured the way she'd humiliated Marcus without an ounce of hesitation. "Yes," he said, "I'll do it." When he walked out of the building, he expected regret, nausea, fear, something. Instead, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: relief. But Linda wasn't relieved. By the next morning, she had seen the viral video and the comments calling for investigations, boycotts, even closure. She paced the restaurant like a storm trapped in a box, muttering about people blowing things out of proportion and internet vultures. The lunchtime crowd, which was usually steady, had thinned to 3 tables. Daniel barely spoke to her. He couldn't. Every time he looked at her, he remembered the investigator saying, "Your testimony will be critical." At 2 p.m., the front door opened and Marcus walked in again, this time not for lunch. He stepped inside with a calmness that made Linda freeze. He wasn't filming. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't smiling either. He approached the counter with the slow, deliberate steps of a man who had decided to reclaim something that had been taken from him. Linda folded her arms. "You've got to be kidding me." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. But Marcus didn't look at Linda. He looked straight at Daniel. "Thank you," he said softly. For a moment, Daniel didn't understand. Then he realized Marcus somehow knew he had spoken up. Maybe the investigators told him. Maybe they had shown him the statement. Maybe they simply told him someone had come forward. But however he knew, Marcus was there with a purpose. Linda slammed her hand on the counter. "What do you think you're doing in here? You're trespassing. You're not welcome." Marcus turned to her slowly. "I'm here to let you know something," he said quietly. "An official complaint has been filed. You'll be contacted soon." Linda scoffed. "Oh, please, do you think anyone cares about your little tantrum?" Marcus's expression didn't change. "They care." And then the door opened again. 2 civil rights investigators stepped in behind him. Linda's face drained of colour. One of the investigators held a clipboard. "Ma'am, we're from the State Civil Rights Compliance Office. We need to speak with you regarding an ongoing discrimination complaint." You could hear a pin drop. Customers stared. Daniel exhaled slowly. Marcus stepped aside and let the investigators approach the counter. Linda tried to smile. It looked painful. This is ridiculous. I didn't do anything wrong." The investigator's voice was calm, professional. "According to the footage, the testimonies and the preliminary review, we have substantial reasons to believe otherwise." Linda glanced at Daniel, the first time she'd looked at him all day. "You," she whispered, "you did this." And Daniel, feeling years of fear lift off his shoulders, simply said, "No, you did." That sentence landed harder than anything Marcus could have said. For the first time since the incident, Linda looked truly rattled, like she finally understood that the fallout wasn't a rumour or a bluff. It was real. It had already begun. The investigation that started inside the restaurant didn't end there. What happened next unfolded slowly at first. Quiet emails, scheduled interviews, paperwork shifting from one office to another. But every step tightened the noose around Linda's career. And while she tried to act unfazed in public, behind closed doors she was unravelling. Within a week, 3 former employees came forward, then 2 more, and then another, each one telling investigators almost identical stories. Linda insulting customers based on how they looked, refusing service without cause, and threatening staff who questioned her judgment. It was a pattern, a long one. Marcus didn't speak publicly about the case. He didn't make dramatic videos or long statements. He simply cooperated, told the truth, and stepped back. But the community didn't forget. By the second week, customers had vanished. Regulars who once filled the booths now drove past without slowing down. Delivery orders dropped to almost 0. Even the morning coffee crowd, usually the restaurant's lifeline, had evaporated. And Linda noticed. Each day she paced the empty dining room with a bitterness that grew sharper, uglier. She slammed cupboards. She barked at the 2 employees who were still hanging on. She kept muttering things like, "People are overreacting," and "This is all his fault," as if saying it enough times might make the truth go away. Daniel avoided her as much as possible, spending his shifts quietly wiping counters that didn't need wiping, waiting, hoping for the moment everything would finally catch up to her. It came on a Thursday afternoon. A black sedan pulled up outside the restaurant. 2 state officials stepped inside, carrying clipboards, files, and expressions that made the air instantly heavier. One of them asked for Daniel. The other asked for Linda. He watched from across the dining room as they explained the findings. The documented discrimination, the witness testimonies, the violation of state civil rights law, and the formal financial penalty tied directly to the manager on duty at the time of the incident. $569,000. The number echoed across the empty restaurant, landing like a stone in a quiet lake. Daniel felt his knees weaken, not out of fear, but out of pure disbelief. Linda looked like she'd been hit by a truck. "What? No, this is insane. You can't do this to me," she sputtered. "You can't expect me to pay that. She pointed at Daniel like he was a crime scene. "He was the manager on shift. Why isn't he taking responsibility?" The official didn't raise his voice. He didn't flinch. "Because several employees, including your own assistant manager, testified that the decision was yours alone, that you acted independently, and that Mr. Yates attempted to de-escalate the situation." Linda blinked, stunned. That's not true. They're lying, all of them. But her voice didn't carry the conviction she wanted. It cracked. It wavered. It sounded exactly like what it was. Desperation. Daniel kept his gaze down, listening. Then the official delivered the final blow. Her business license would be suspended pending a full compliance audit. Her training certification revoked. Her ownership put under review. Linda stumbled back like the words themselves had weight. She grabbed the counter for balance, her face draining of colour. "You can't do this," she whispered. "I built this place." The official closed the folder. "Ma'am, you destroyed it." At that exact moment, the door opened. Marcus stepped in. Not to gloat, not to yell. He simply came to witness the end of something he never asked for, something she created herself the moment she singled him out. Linda stared at him, eyes wild. "Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted?" Marcus shook his head. "I just wanted lunch," he said quietly. That sentence hit harder than any lawsuit ever could. A silence fell over the room, thick, uncomfortable, final. Daniel watched Linda's posture collapse into something he'd never seen before. Not anger, not arrogance, just the hollow recognition of a downfall she caused with her own hands. The officials escorted her to sign the preliminary paperwork. The last two employees silently removed their aprons and walked out. The restaurant lights flickered as the kitchen power was shut down for inspection. And when Marcus turned to leave, he paused beside Daniel. "You did the right thing," he said. Daniel nodded. "So did you." They exchanged a brief, understanding glance, two men who didn't know each other, tied together by a moment that spiraled into a reckoning neither of them could have predicted. Behind them, Linda stood alone in the empty restaurant she once ruled like a kingdom. Now she had no customers, no staff, no business, no protection. Just the heavy realization that discrimination wasn't just ugly, it was expensive. Humiliatingly expensive. As Marcus walked out into the sunlight, Daniel followed, letting the door close behind them as quietly as a sigh. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't explosive. It was justice, quiet, firm, and overdue. If you believe that standing up for what's right can change everything, share this story and let others know that justice can prevail.
True justice is an evolving process, and awareness remains your strongest shield. We appreciate your viewership and dedication to clarity.